Okay, guys, welcome to another session for uh, AWS Cloud Database Administration. My name is Martin, and I'm a database cloud support engineer for Amazon Web Services. And as usual, guys, today's session we'll be looking at like a continuation from the previous video, where we'll be looking at how you can create your private Amazon Relational Database instance using the AWS Management Console, and how you can authenticate to this RDS instance using a Bastion host or a jump server. Okay, maybe the authentication client could be PCQual or PG admin from your PC. Okay, yeah. So as our menu, like we're going to have a scenario description. So I'm going to use architectural diagram to explain the scenario, and I'll give you prerequisites and steps as usual. And later on, we are going to move to a demo. Okay. Yeah. So here is the um, architectural description of the scenario. Okay. So if you look critically, yeah, so guys, in our previous video, I showed you how you can create a public facing RDS instance, okay, where we're able to deploy a public facing RDS instance in a public subnet, okay, and we're able to authenticate it from authenticate into the RDS instance from our local PC without having any hurdles, right? And the reason why we're able to authenticate without any problem because the RDS instance was actually public facing, right? Like it was previously deployed in a public subnet and not in a private subnet. It's okay. Like the reason why I'm explaining this scenario is for you to understand both situations, right? In my previous video, we created an RDS instance, okay, that was located in a public subnet, meaning that the RDS instance was having a public IP. So we were able to authenticate to this RDS instance using the internet gateway without any hurdles, so that like without any firewalls, right? Because the RDS instance was publicly facing and it was having a public IP address. Okay, but now the situation we are faced now, it is how can we have a secured RDS instance where we have this RDS instance deployed in a private subnet, right? Now, you can easily deploy this RDS instance in a private subnet, but how do you authenticate to this RDS instance maybe from your local PC? This is where the problem comes, right? This is where you actually start having issues. Okay, so when you deploy your RDS instance in a private subnet, what happens? What happens is that this RDS instance can only be accessed from an AWS, a resource that is within your VPC, right? You cannot access this RDS instance from a resource or a compute resource out of this VPC because this RDS instance is in a private subnet, okay? And it does not have like the route table does not have an internet gateway attached to it. Is that okay? Yeah. So what we do is that, okay, that's fine. Since we cannot authenticate directly from our local PC to this RDS instance, because it does authenticate to the private subnet does not pass through the internet gateway. Okay, so you can only authenticate to a public subnet through to a public through a public sub in a public subnet through an internet gateway. Okay, so what we do is that okay, we'll decide that will be okay, that's fine. So we're going to have our RDS instance deployed in this private subnet, okay, and we are going to now deploy like a facilitator. That facilitator like another resource that is within the same VPC that will have access to the RDS instance. Okay, that facilitator or that resource is known as a jump server or a bastion host, right? The facilitator, and it's always an EC2 instance, like it's a normal EC2 instance, but the role will just be to like help us authenticate to our RDS instance. So what happens is that you're going to, since this uh, facilitator or the Bastion host will be deployed in a public subnet, it will be easy for any client in the public or in the internet to authenticate to this Bastion host through the internet gateway. Why? Because the Bastion host will be in the public subnet, right? So what you will do is that you first authenticate to this EC2 instance or the Bastion host passing through the internet gateway. Okay, when you authenticate in here, at that moment, that is when you are now able to now do an internal authentication to your RDS instance. Okay, because this RDS instance is in the same VPC, like it's in the same VPC like the EC2 instance, right? So that gives you opportunity to authenticate. Okay, so what you need to know as far as this is concerned is you need to do some firewall rules, right? You need to set some security groups, right? First, the security group of the RDS instance need to allow traffic from the EC2 instance. Like the security group need to allow inbound traffic from this EC2 instance to the RDS instance, right? Then the EC2 instance need to allow, like they need to be an inbound traffic into this EC2 instance from your public facing server that you're using to authenticate. Okay, so that's a scenario description. We're just giving you some sort of scenario description so you understand actually what we are doing and the purpose of that. Okay, so it'll be easier for you to understand where we move to our management console. Okay, so for the prerequisites and steps, remember guys, the first prerequisite will be we have to decide on the region, right? We have to decide on our region. What region are we going to deploy our RDS instance and the database engine? Okay, for this case, we are going to go with PostgreSQL, right? Maybe next time we'll go with MySQL or SQL Server, any other one. Okay, and then we're going to create our database subnet group. Okay, and we're going to create our parameter group. We're going to create our security group, right? And we'll also create another security group for the Bastion host. Then we create our RDS instance in a private subnet, right? It will be deployed in a private subnet. And then we're going to deploy our EC2 instance as a Bastion host or the jump server in a public subnet. Okay, so those are the deployment process. So deployment steps. Okay, and yeah, so the second thing to do after deployment will be security groups adjustments and connectivity, right? You will need to do security group adjustment as I told you. The very first security group adjustment that you need to do, guys, you need to adjust security rules, right? That's firewalls, right? The very first thing is need to adjust inbound traffic from your local PC, right, to your Bastion host, okay, through the SSH, that secure shell, on port 22. Is that okay? Then the second is you also need to allow inbound traffic from that your Bastion host to your RDS instance through the TCP and using your database port. Okay. Yeah. And for connectivity, remember we need two authentications here. We need to authenticate to our Bastion host, which is a server, right? And from the server, we authenticate to the RDS instance, which is in the private subnet. Now, how do we authenticate to an EC2 instance? We authenticate to an EC2 instance using the SSH command, right? We use the SSH command and using what? A key pair. So we need a key pair of this EC2 instance, and we need the public DNS or the public IP address of the EC2 instance. Then we can now SSH to this RDS to this EC2 instance, and from the EC2 instance we now authenticate to our RDS instance. Okay, so with that said, we can move to our management console for the next. So we are now in our RDS management console. Okay, like in our AWS management console. So we need to now deploy these resources. Okay, and yeah, guys. So the very first thing, you go and search Aurora and RDS. Okay, you search Aurora and RDS. For me, I already have it in my favorite. So I hit on Aurora and RDS. Okay, with Aurora and RDS, guys, as usual, I'll always use the EUS1. I've chosen my region, and I'll be deploying a PostgreSQL RDS instance. Okay, I'll be deploying a PostgreSQL relational database. So I have decided on my region. I've decided on my availability zones. I will go for EUS1A and B as usual. And so the very first thing, we need to create our database subnet group, right? So you move to database subnet group and you create a DB subnet group. So let's call this Postgres subnet group. Okay, Postgres subnet group. You can just see the same description. And I'll choose my VPC. I'll go for default. And the subnets are like need to now add subnets, right? And based on availability zones. Remember, I want this RDS user to be in EUS 1A and 1B. So I'll go for EUS 1A and 1B, right? So they're added. Now I need to choose two subnets, one in EUS 1A and one in EUS 1B. So I select one in EUS 1A and one in EUS 1B. Okay. So remember, for multi-AZ, you must select three. The reason why I'm going for two because I'll go for single AZ. Okay, and I create my subnet group. Okay, so a subnet group has been created. Next, we need to go to our areas. We need to go to Yeah, so we need to go and create our parameter group. Remember, parameter group is that feature that is going to help us control the functionality and all parameters that are going to be attributed to our RDS instance. So I'll move to parameter groups, right? And I create a parameter group for that particular RDS instance, which is Postgres. So I call this Postgres parameter group. Okay. I can just description same. And I'll need to choose the engine. So I decided to go for PostgreSQL. Okay. So what's the family? I would like to go for 17. Okay. And what is the like what type? Is it a cluster parameter group or a database? Right. So go for DB parameter group because so it's a single database, not a cluster. Cluster is for Aurora. Aurora has clusters, right? So I'll create my parameter group. Okay, so you see my parameter group has already been created. So I'll now need to create my security groups, right, guys? So we need two security groups, one for our RDS instance and another one for our Bastion host. Remember, okay? So I'll hit on security group. So I'll click on security groups. Yeah, so you can see we already, as I explained in my previous video, there's always a default security group you can use, but for the sake of isolation and having full control of everything, I always want to create these resources and have control over them. Okay, so I'll create two security groups, one for the RDS instance and one for our Bastion host. So I create security group. So name, let's call this RDS Postgres security group. Okay, and describe VPC as selected already. For security group rules, we are going to we are going to adjust that later. Okay, so you can create that. Yeah, so the RDS uh, the RDS Postgres security group has been created. We need to create another one, right? We need to create another one for our Bastion host. So we go to create security group. So I will call this RDS security group. Let's say security group for Bastion, right? So description. And the VPC that's default has been selected, and I just need to create a security group. Okay, yeah, so you can see that I've created these two security groups, and yeah, so at this point we need to go create our RDS instance, right? So we move to Aurora and RDS. Yeah, so when we get here, we need to deploy our RDS instance. So we go to create RDS instance. Okay, so we go for standard create, we select the engine, PostgreSQL, and need to select the version. Remember, our parameter group was for version 17, so we need to select the version 17. Okay, so I'll go with this. Okay, you can skip extended support. I don't need it now. You can go for testing purposes. Okay, and for testing purposes, I'll go for single AZ. I'd already explained this. So the instance identifier, I'll call it RDS RDS Postgres credentials master username. I call it SA. Then I will self manage the credentials. Okay, so credentials. So okay, and now select my instance class. I'll go for the cheapest instance class. Maybe go for T4 medium. Okay, and I'll select my storage. Can go for GP3. Allocated storage, I prefer 20 gigabyte. Additional storage configuration. If you want to enable auto scaling, you enable that. I don't need that for now. This is a case where we can like our EC2. If we already had our EC2 instance configured, we could select connect to an EC2 instance. Okay, and there will be automatic adjustment of security firewalls, but we do not have that EC2 instance yet, so we just need to like don't connect. And for our network, remember our virtual private network, go for default. Okay, security group, you see Postgres security group. We need to like the subnet, you see the subnet has already been picked, which we created, Postgres subnet group. Okay, and now this is where the security part of it comes in, right? Comes to play. If you enable public access to this RDS instance, an internet gateway will be attached to those subnets. But if you if you decide to keep it no, no internet gateway will be attached to that RDS instance. Therefore, mean that those subnets will become private subnets, and you can access those particular subnets from a resource that is directly from a resource that is out of the AWS environment or your VPC, right? Yeah, so we go for our security group. So we select let's go for existing security group. We select this is a security group we had created, right? These are two security groups. So we select RDS Postgres security group, and for our preference, I'll go let my RDS instance currently be deployed in EU West 1B. Okay, I don't need a proxy additional configuration. I can decide to change a port if I want, but I will maintain 5432. And database authentication, I'll go with password. Database insights, if you want to enable performance insight, you can do that. I do not need that for now. Enhanced monitoring, you can enable that. I do not need that. If you want to export logs, guys, you can do that. But remember, these are paid services because these logs have retention period and you need to be paying for that. Okay, if you want DevOps Guru, you can enable that. And yeah, you can see my estimated cost, just 52 5291 US dollars. Okay, so create my RDS instance. Yeah, while the RDS instance is being created, guys, remember we still have another resource to deploy. That's a Bastion host, right? A Bastion host is simply an EC2 instance. So you go to EC2, select EC2. So we go to, you see, instances, right? So here we do not have any instance, so we have to launch an EC2 instance. That's a Bastion host, okay? And this EC2 instance will be in a public subnet, remember, guys. So yeah, can name the server. Let's call this RDS. Let's call this RDS Bastion host. Let's select I'll go for Amazon, the AMI, the Amazon machine image. I'll go for Amazon Linux, okay? And yeah, we'll go with the default, no problem. Next thing to select the instance type. Yes, you can go with the free tier for testing purposes. Now the key pair, guys, there's no key pair yet. This is very crucial. You must create a key pair, because without this key pair you cannot authenticate to this Bastion host. Okay, so you need to create a key pair. So let's name our key pair. Let's call this RDS Bastion key pair. Call this RDS Bastion key pair. So yeah, we can go with .pem, and yeah, you create a key pair. When the key pair has been created, you see it's downloaded automatically. When you create a key pair, it's downloaded into your local PC. Remember, guys, so you can see at the top right corner of my screen, it's being downloaded, right? The key pair has been downloaded. So we can now select the key pair. It has already been selected automatically, and yeah, we proceed. Network. What do we do? A security group. We need to, let's select a new security, an existing security group, right? Because we already had a security group for this Bastion host. So you can see this is our RDS security group for Bastion. Okay, now for this the storage, we can just go with 8 GB. It's just for testing purposes. Okay, and okay, you see, if you look very well, they said auto assign public IP is enabled, right? This is enabled because we need this particular EC2 instance to be in a public subnet, should be publicly accessible, right? So that has been accepted, and the storage has been chosen. Okay, so let's go for advanced details. We don't need the directory, IAM profile, not important for now. So yeah, I think we are good enough to deploy this EC2 instance. Okay, so if you want to add the user data, that's fine. I don't need that for now. Okay, so I'll launch my EC2 instance. Yeah, so while the EC2 instance is launching, let's wait for a while. Yeah, so the EC2 instance is being initialized. You can see, even though it's running, but it's not yet, the status has never been checked to be running. So it's still initializing, so we need to wait. Okay, so we need to go to let's go and check our RDS instance and make sure that it is up and running. So go to Aurora and RDS. So if you hit the databases, you see that currently our RDS instance is already on backing up. Okay, and by default, when an RDS instance is undergoing a backup or store or snapshot, you can access that RDS instance without any problem. Okay, yeah. So but we need to make let this instance go totally available. Yeah, guys, so we have our RDS instance that is available, status is available, And let's check our EC2 instance. Yes. So the EC2 instance is also up and running. Okay. So yeah, we are good to go here now. The next thing we have to do is we need to do some firewall configurations, right, guys? Remember what I said? We need to, in the security group of the RDS instance, right? We need to allow inbound traffic from this Bastion host, and from the security group of this Bastion host, we need to, from the security group of this Bastion host, we need to allow inbound traffic from our local PC. That's from maybe from your personal IP, right? So that will give you the opportunity to authenticate to this Bastion host, then authenticate to internally to the RDS instance. Okay. So the first thing, we'll select the EC2 instance. Let's get the security group from the EC2 instance, from the EC2 instance itself. So you go to yeah. So we move to right down to the security tab. From there, we'll be able to see the security group. Okay. So remember RDS security group for the Bastion, right? You can hit on the security group. Remember, this is the Bastion, right? The Bastion host, what is the goal? We need to be able to authenticate from our local PC into this Bastion host, right? So we need to edit inbound rule, and we add rules. What was the rule I said? We need to allow SSH, right? SSH connection in using a protocol 22 from our local PC, that's our local IP, okay? Yeah, so okay, so I will search SSH. Okay, so I need SSH, and you see it has already picked the port, like port TCP, um, port 22. Okay, and here we need to select the IP. Okay, guys, I will select my IP, so you automatically pick my IP address. Okay, so you pick my IP, and yeah, so I can now save security group rules. Yeah, so you can see that we have actually allowed traffic from our local PC to the Bastion host, right? So we can SSH into this Bastion host. That's the first step. When the step is done, we now go to the RDS instance and also allow traffic from the Bastion host, right, to the RDS instance. So we go to databases, we select the database, we go to connectivity and security. From there, you'll be able to see the security group of the RDS instance. So you select it. So open the security group. So here we need to add inbound rule. What inbound rule do you need to add, guys? Remember, we need to add inbound rule so much so that traffic can be accepted into this RDS instance from the the Bastion host, which is the EC2 instance, right? It therefore means that the best option to do is to allow traffic like we can use the IP address of the EC2 instance, right? But the best option, you can just use the security group of the EC2 instance, right? You can use the subnet group of that EC2 instance, like the CIDR. You can use the CIDR range, right? You can use the IP address, but you can also use the security group, right? And I always prefer the security group, right? Yeah. So I will go to add rule. Okay. So what rule? We need a TCP for Postgres, right? So we need Postgres. Look at the port 5432, and here is a custom. We are now going to choose custom. Why are we choosing custom? Because it is, we are selecting like a source that we know, right? It could be like you want to write the IP, specific IP address. We want to identify any other resource. So here I'll just say security group. Okay, you see the security group is well written there, the security group of the Bastion. Okay, so you select that security group of the Bastion. It therefore means that any traffic from the security group of this Bastion host will be able to get authenticated to this RDS instance. Okay, you can decide to label it inbound from Bastion. Okay, so at this point you save the rule. Okay guys, so we are done deploying and configuring the network firewalls. So we now need to authenticate, right? So the very first thing, we're going to start authenticating using PG admin. That's the graphical user interface authenticating to um, RDS Postgres, right? So the very first thing we need to go copy, we need first the key pair of the EC2 or the Bastion host is already in our local PC, right? But for the EC2 instance, we need the public DNS, right? If you go to say pull this thing up, so we need the public DNS of this EC2 instance. You see, we need this because or the public, you could call it the public IP or the public DNS, right? You could use the public IP or we use the public DNS. I always prefer you use the public DNS. So I'll copy the public DNS, right? Remembering that the I have the key pair already downloaded, and we also need the user. By default, I did not create any user, so by default, I'll be using the EC2 user. That's by default given by Amazon Web Services. Okay, so yeah, that's fine. So I'll go now to RDS. First, I'll need the endpoint. So I'll get the endpoint of the RDS instance, right? And I'll also need the master database name. I'll also need the master database, that's Postgres. And yeah, so let's go to PG admin 4. Hey guys, so I'm with PG, this is my PG admin 4. So I'll go to register a server, right? Um, I'll move to register a server, right? So I'll go register a server. And here, the very first thing we need to do, guys, take note of this. We'll be using an SSH, a secure shell tunnel, right? We'll not be connecting directly, right? So we're using a secure SSH tunnel. So we can just name this connection RDS auth, right? And from there, you move to, sorry, you name the connection area, or then you move to SSH tunnel to bring in the credentials of that Bastion host, right? So you go to SSH tunnel and you toggle connect, use SSH tunnel. Now you need to paste the tunnel host, that's the public DNS of our EC2 instance, right? That we copied. So I've copied, and the tunnel is SSH using port 22. The username, guys, I told you I didn't create any username for the EC2 instance, so I'll use the default, which is EC2 hyphen user. Okay. Yep. So now I didn't create a password because I preferred using a key pair. So I have an identifier. That's a key pair. So I click on key pair, then I select the source of the key pair, and I select the key pair and I open. Okay. Yeah. So I don't need to put a password right now. So now I need to go back to my connections. Okay. Now this is now the connections authenticating to your RDS instance, right? What is the host name? What is the host name of your RDS instance, which is the endpoint? The port is 5432 by default. The database, you can go for the master's database by default that's Postgres. Okay, and the master username is I gave SA. Okay, now the password. Okay, and at this juncture you can now save and see if you are going to authenticate. Yeah, so guys, so you can see you can authenticate to this RDS instance privately, securely, without any problem. Okay, so as you can see, you can securely authenticate your private RDS instance that's in a private subnet in Amazon Web Services, and you can start running your query without with confidence that your RDS instance is totally secure, right? maybe we can just create maybe another database just to confirm that at least we can run some basic queries. Yeah, so let's do a basic query. Maybe let's create a database. Okay, so create database. Let's call this database testdb. Okay, and we execute the query. Yeah, so we are able to create a database after we've authenticated. Okay, using the pg admin. All right. Yeah, guys, so I'll be moving forward to show you how you can authenticate using the command line interface, right? The command line interface, that's the executable using PSQL. Remember, I told you guys, you can always connect to authenticate your RDS instance or your Postgres RDS instance using the graphical user interface, or you can use the command line interface. Okay, so let me move to my other screen and show you how to use the command line interface. Okay, guys, so from our command line interface, you can also authenticate, right? If you look at my screen, this is the PowerShell command to SSH to your to an EC2 instance, right? The very first command is SSH, the ID, like the path of the key pair, right? You copy the key pair right up to the name, copy the path of the key pair. So we have key pair, rename, then the EC2 instance username. Okay, so as I said, the very first thing you see, you have SSH, the ID, the path of the key pair. I copy the path, okay, of the key pair, including the name, then the EC2 username, right? By default, I didn't give any EC2 username, so I use EC2 user by default. And at EC2, that's the last thing is the EC2 public DNS name, right? So when you have that, you can go with enter, and start asking you if you want to confirm that. So I go with yes. So it has permission denied. Let me check this. Yeah, sorry guys, I mixed up my key pair. I mixed up my key pair there. Okay, so that's fine. As I said, I got my my SSH, my identified as the path, right? If you look very well, so that's the path. C user Martin desktop RDS Bastion key pair. So that's the path to my key pair. Then the EC2 user, okay, which is by default at EC2. That's the EC2 DNS public DNS, okay. And yeah, so we can hit enter, and still saying no directory. Okay, let me check this out again. There's an issue somewhere. Okay, I think the issue here is I need to specify this in code. So I'll bring this back, and I'll specify my part. I want to make it specific. So put this in code. Yep. So I'll put this in code, and yeah. So I go to enter. Okay. It's the same permission denied, guys. I need to check this out. There's a problem somewhere. Okay, guys. So I needed to grant some permissions to my user. Okay. So yeah. So go in. So yeah. So I've granted some permissions to have access to the key pair in my user group in my PC. Okay, so I've copied the path, and as I explained, the EC2 user and the DNS name of the Bastion host. Okay, so I go enter. Okay, so you can see I have I'm authenticated to the EC2 instance, right? This is Amazon Linux, remember guys. So this is a EC2 instance that I've authenticated into. So at this juncture, you can authenticate to your RDS instance without any problem, right? Using the psql command. Okay, so just first of all check if the psql, normally Amazon Linux 2023 should have the psql executable, right? You should have that psql command within that within its repository. So let's check. You can just go psql, let's just check if it's available. Okay, it's not available. Let's check again. psql, it's not available. It's supposed to be available, so let me just check. Okay, so it's showing that this the psql binary is not available for us to use. So I think we can just install it. Okay, so at this juncture we need to install it in our Bastion host, because the Bastion host was just created to authenticate. So but you need a psql you need that specific psql program to be able to authenticate your RDS instance, right? So I'll go with sudo yeah, on install. Let's say go with sudo let's dnf let's search, try to search if it's available. Let's search Postgres thing. So let's search Postgres and see how it's available. Okay, so I can see that it is within the repository, so we can install it. You can install a program. So you see there is Postgres there's Postgres Cure 17 PostgreSQL client program, right? So this is a SQL client program, so we need to install that, right? So you can just simply copy that. Okay, but it should be Postgres 17, remember guys. um Postgres 17. So you can just copy that and we install. Okay, so I'll move down to I go with sudo dnf install, then I paste that particular program, then I press enter. Okay, so there's a psql package, so accept. Okay, all right, so it has been installed. You search again psql add version. Okay, so the psql executable is available, so we can now connect like to our RDS instance using the psql command. Okay, okay guys, let me show you the command. So here is the command. Yeah guys, so we've actually installed. I was just trying to show you how to test if that program is available. psql, go with add version. Okay, so you see the psql executable is already available, so we can use it now to authenticate. Okay, so yeah, at this juncture we are already in our EC2 instance that was deployed in the public subnet. So we run the psql command. So you run psql, the host is the RDS endpoint, right? And the port is 5432, the user is SA, as I give SA, the database is Postgres. Okay, so if I hit enter, they'll ask me the password for that user, database password for the user. So I'll go with remember. Okay, and I hit on enter. All right, so if you can see, I'm already connected to the RDS instance. This is the most secure way of authenticating, right? I can run some script. Maybe I want to see that particular database which I created using the graphic user interface. So I just go on I hit backslash. Let's go with dt relations. let's go with relation so far. So let's go with tn. Okay, so you can see that uh, list of schemas we have public schema. We have just one public schema. Okay, let me list databases. Yeah, to get this, you see, I go with so backslash, I go with L, and I list all the number the databases, right? So you can see this was the database we created. Remember, we created these databases in the graphical user interface. Okay, so yeah, so guys, thanks a lot, thanks for watching, thanks for sharing, and as I told you, my name is Martin. I'm a database cloud support engineer for Amazon Web Services, and this is my own way of giving back to the community. As I said, if you have any issue while using any of our services, please let me know, and I will create a session. I can create a session for the specific issue or specific error, or I will be able to reply to you directly. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Please, if you want to get these updates all the time from the horse's mouth, okay, because I'm within I'm within right, so I'll be able to give you some sort of ample information, and you can always subscribe to my channel so you have updated videos immediately I upload. Okay, and I'll always upload videos over the weekend, let's say Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Okay, guys. So yeah, so in my next video, please keep in your mind, my next video I will be able to give you the steps in which you can actually deploy a well secured isolated RDS instance. When I say well secured isolated RDS instance, I'm talking about an RDS instance that is totally private, and an RDS instance whose resources you have total control, because this particular resource we deployed it using the default VPC, and the default VPC you do not have total control over it. Okay, so we'll be creating a VPC, creating the subnet, creating the gateways, creating the everything, like totally isolated and full, having you the users having full control over it. Okay, so much so that you'll be able to you can do modifications without the restrictions on default uses of resources. Okay, all right, guys, see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.